afternoon. I'm Linda Baker, the Learning Director at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children. On behalf of the Knowledge Hub team, welcome to our third research briefing, Safe and Understood, Intervening with Families to Promote Healthy Child Outcomes and Prevent Abuse Recurrence for Young Child Victims of Domestic Violence Exposure. Today, presenters will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes. Please enter comments or questions for the presenters into slido.com using the code 7423 shown on each slide. During the last 5 to 10 minutes of our research briefing, I will present some of your questions. The link to the presentation slides was emailed to you this morning. I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters. Dr. Angelique Jenny is the Associate Director of Safe and Understood at the Child Development Institute. She is also Assistant Professor and the Woods Holmes Research Chair in Children's Mental Health in the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. She has over 20 years of experience in intervention and prevention services within the child protection, children's mental health, and violence against women sectors. Dr. Katrina Scott is the co-principal investigator for Safe and Understood at the University of Toronto. She is also a psychologist, professor, and incoming director of the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children at Western University. She held the Canada Research Chair in Family Violence Prevention and Intervention between 2008 and 2018. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter today.
Thank you, Linda. Just waiting to see the slides. You've already seen the title slide, and I would just go straight to thanking you for being here today and a big thank you to our funder, the Public Health Agency of Canada, without whom we wouldn't be here today, and a very big thank you to our partners. We had multiple partners involved in this project. You'll see we had 5 universities and 9 community organizations, and a big thank you to Child Development Institute, who was the lead agency for this project. I'll go straight to talking about the focus of our project for Safe and Understood. It was a 5-year multi-province project. We had projects in Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick. We targeted families with young children who have been exposed to domestic violence and were substantiated by Child Protective Services. We had main objectives for our project was to improve outcomes for these little ones, specifically to prevent the reoccurrence of DV, to reduce impairment that comes from those experiences, and to expand the reach of 2 programs, Mothers in Mind and Caring Dads, and to look at the implementation of those programs in varying contexts. We had several tasks. We conducted national scan of services available for young children from 0 to 4, looking at the risk factors of domestic violence exposure. We implemented Mothers in Mind and Caring Dad programs across provinces in multiple contexts, and we collected pre and post data from our participants. We conducted comprehensive file reviews and are continuing to do so. Our main takeaways from the project is that there is a strong need for DV and trauma-informed parenting programs such as Mothers in Mind and Caring Dads, and this was really reflected in the high level of interest in facilitator training we received. Mothers in Mind and CD programs were successfully adapted and implemented in the multiple contexts we tried them in: French, Arabic, Indigenous services, rural, and child protection agencies. Barriers to implementation included adequate funding, employee turnover, and the need for language-specific program materials for programs that relied on those. MIM and CD were successfully offered in collaborative models within Child Protection Services, which we're very excited to report on. And there, of course, are ongoing challenges resulting from the complexity of families' needs when they're being investigated by Child Protection, but also because of the differing conceptualizations of domestic violence at the level of investigation. Relationships were seen to be extremely important, not just between domestic violence and child protection services, but also between clients and their workers. It was found to be critical to successfully engaging and retaining mothers and fathers in the intervention programs. Mothers and fathers who attended these programs expressed high levels of satisfaction with the service and reported that facilitators practiced in trauma-informed ways. Both programs led to beneficial outcomes that were consistent with our program logic models. So first, we did our national scan, and we found gaps in current services around parenting programs for young children who are exposed to violence. Provincial and territorial action plans, so we looked across Canada, rarely include a focus on children. The most commonly available services are general mental health, and very few have specific that are targeted for domestic violence, and even fewer for have the capacity to reach children, very young children, such as those under 4. We know that there are child advocacy centers and child and youth advocacy centers out there, increasingly available, but again, few have the capacity to serve this distinct population under the age of 4. The violence against women sector is very critical to this work. They provide education and support for mothers. Again, lots of programs for moms with children over 4 and a lot fewer services for those little ones. Our programs, I'll let you go directly to the websites to learn more about them, because that's another presentation in itself. We'll go straight to the next slide to talk about the findings of these programs. So Mothers in Mind and Caring Dads, we actually were able to train 340 facilitators in Mothers in Mind. 210 Caring Dads facilitators were trained. As a result, we ran 25 MIM programs and 22 Caring Dads across Canada, serving 178 fathers, 120 mothers, and 760 young children. We implemented these programs. We're going to talk specifically about Mothers in Mind at Children's Aid Society of Toronto. We had a program evaluation, and we were very fortunate that 65 women agreed to participate in both a pre- and post-test analysis of their experiences. We had statistically significant findings in the program's ability to increase self-efficacy for moms, their parenting knowledge, and surprisingly, we decreased parenting depression and anxiety, even though that wasn't a target outcome of the program. So we're excited about that. We have other trends that are approaching statistical significance that we hope that in future samples, when we have larger sizes, we might have more power to talk about that. Perceived parental impact on their parenting increased, trauma symptoms decreased, and parental warmth and involvement increased. The most healthful program aspects that were reported, women talked about a respectful and empathic environment, that they developed new skills to bond with their children, and that they experienced peer support and connection. They talked about motivation to attend, that they were told to attend because of worker suggestion, but kept going because children enjoyed it so much. They received social support, they felt less isolated, and they had improved relationships with their children. Again, the most powerful finding here is that their relationship with their child protection worker is what improved their group experience. Suggested improvements from the moms themselves is that they wanted the program to be a bit longer or to be available more often. 73% of women were extremely satisfied with their program. And now I'm going to put it over to Katrina Scott to report on the Caring Dads components.
So we were really pleased to be able to offer both a pairing of interventions, looking at what mothers needed and also looking about what we needed to do with fathers to prevent the recurrence of violence. The Caring Dads program has that as its main aim, and we were able to get program evaluation results from 89 fathers who completed pre- and post-evaluations. Fathers attended the program because they wanted to have better relationships with their children and in some cases their partner, but also because they felt pressured by their child protection workers to do so as a way to improve their safety and well-being around and in their families. In terms of fathers' experience of the program, 89% of the fathers were either very satisfied or satisfied with the program, and 97% of fathers said that they would recommend Caring Dads to another father in a similar situation. 81% reported that attending the program helped them improve their relationship with their child's mother, and 95% reported that the program made them a better parent to their child. When we took a look at their self-reports on key aspects of parenting, from the beginning to the end of the program, we found significant changes in terms of fathers' child-centered involvement with their child, their level of warmth expressed towards their child, We found a decrease in fathers' negative emotions, including depression and hostility. And we also found that fathers reported decreased undermining of their partners and decreased exposure of their children to ongoing conflict and ongoing domestic violence. Now, these two studies where we looked at program and evaluation results for MIM and for caring dads were nested and are part of a larger cluster randomized controlled trial. So a cluster randomized control trial was the most rigorous and for us ethical evaluation that we felt that we could conduct of these of the success of embedding and partnering across child mental health and child protection to provide parenting intervention. This trial involved assigning workers to one of 4 different conditions. 2 of those conditions involved providing workers additional training and consultation around working with mothers at the intersection of domestic violence and parenting, and provided a flagging and actually a priority referral for clients into the MIM programs for those workers. Another 2 did the same thing, but in this case focused on caring dads, so training and consultation around working with fathers and priority referral to caring dads. So today we are going to report on 2 of the secondary outcomes. The first outcome that we're going to report on is the results of worker training. So what we did is we asked, as I said, we provided workers with training, and then we asked whether or not that training was effective in a couple different ways. What we found is that child protection workers were highly satisfied and reported that they liked and found the training sessions useful, regardless of whether or not it was focused on mothers or fathers. But when we looked at child protection workers' conceptualization in cases and in their reported self-efficacy, what we found is that the training and resources we provided increased child protection's capacity to identify risks and needs of mothers experiencing domestic violence and increase their self-efficacy for practice. But the same was not true with fathers. So it did not improve child protection workers' capacity, and in fact, training decreased worker confidence, speaking to the need to continue to do more work on how it is we need to help child protection work with fathers who've perpetrated violence. Our second result around this, our secondary result, was to what extent were we able then to get referrals to these embedded intervention programs. So if you were in a mother's and mind conditions, I'll remind you, cases were flagged and then were given priority referral into intervention. So over the course of the study, 60 mothers and 82 fathers were flagged as being appropriate referrals to either mothers in mind or caring dads. And as you can see, in about a little over half the cases in both groups, no referral was made. When referral was made, Mothers in Mind was quite successful, or got 54% of the moms through, and caring dads got 38%. So in terms of a secondary outcome, rates of referral were low in terms of those targeted cases. So fathers and mothers are getting to programs, but we need to understand more about what's happening from the front door. We also knew that we asked whether or not what was going on if people weren't going to a program, because obviously there are multiple ways that child protection workers may be working to reduce DV-related risks. Our preliminary results suggest that if they're not engaged in the program overall, there tends to be less work done between child protection workers and parents. So this leads into what we're doing as our ongoing work. So we right now are engaged in a 2-year follow-up review that's looking at, what are some of the barriers and facilitators of referrals for moms and dads. We are looking in a long-term way about the outcomes for mothers and fathers who did attend and did not attend caring dads and MIM. And we're doing more work to look at the conceptualization of domestic violence risk and response within child protection service. Our final area of study was looking at the implementation of these programs in different contexts. As Angelique already reported, we were successfully able to do this implementation. So what made that more possible? Well, having a well-designed website with ongoing coaching, consultation, community of practice, and resources available was certainly a facilitating factor. Having sufficient institutional resources, and having a fit between the program's philosophy and agency's mandates and practice were all identified as important facilitators. Challenging factors included staffing turnover and inadequate funding for positions. And then there were some specific challenges associated with different environments. In urban environments, one of the challenges was making sure that we had sufficient and diverse enough interpreters. In rural locations, there were more issues around recruitment and getting enough people to actually run a group at one time, and also concerns about relationships between participants. And in our French-speaking community, we had sometimes problems finding particular resources, in particular in MIM. The program makes use of children's books that speak about emotional issues, and trying to find those appropriate children's books in French was sometimes challenging. So that is our safe and understood findings in a nutshell, from the scan across Canada to the evaluation of the Mothers in Mind and Caring Dads programs from the participants, from our work in terms of what it means to implement within a child protection practice, what has gone well, what are we still looking at, and then thinking about the implementation of these programs and their facility to be run in different environments. So I would now like to open the floor to questions that people may have.
And we have quite a few. The first one I'm going to direct to Angelique. I noticed that while facilitators were trained in New Brunswick, neither program ended up being delivered in that province. What barriers prevented program implementation?
Well, that was a very specific case, again, of we targeted a very remote rural community, and there were lots of challenges in terms of getting enough participants to run the program fully. And also it was a French-specific program as well, so I'm sure they also were struggling with the books as they did in Quebec. But it was mostly an inability to get the right number of mums with the right number of children in that age range from that particularly remote community.
This question goes to Katrina. Why do you think that the training regarding risks with men decreased child protection workers' confidence?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I will also tell you that one of the things that we were quite surprised at the very beginning is when we asked child protection workers before we'd even done study, how confident do you feel in recognizing risks, in making plans that included thinking about fathers or mothers, depending on what it was, in working with intervention programs. On average, our child protection workers felt quite confident. So we were already starting at a level of confidence that was a little bit surprisingly high to us. And I actually think that, well, part of me is like, okay, maybe we did a really bad job of training. Another part of me is thinking about when we really asked child protection workers to start to wrestle with what would it mean to start to address risks and start to address perpetration with fathers. It took them into a place of practice, or to thinking about a kind of practice that they weren't currently engaged in. We were asking them to think about what it might mean to reach out to fathers, how it is that you needed to conceptualize their risk and deal with it as part of the case. What did that mean in terms of the conversations that you would need to have with fathers about the importance of changing and about holding him accountable and responsible for his violence. And I think that it was in those conversations that child protection workers then said, well, wait a second. I'm not sure this is what I want to sign up for. I'm not sure that this is something I feel confident doing. And I think that that's true, and that shows not only in terms of their confidence, it also shows in the fact that when we asked before and after around their conceptualization, their ability to conceptualize risks specifically associated with fathers, there was challenges. They had challenges identifying those risks and identifying those ways that they could respond both before and after. I think this is an area of practice change that needs to come with child protection. It's something I know many of our child protection agencies have been working with, and I think there's still quite a ways to go.
Can these programs be run outside the child protection agencies across Canada? And what about agencies that support domestic violence survivors, such as shelters?
These programs actually started in violence against women organizations first. This is our first time implementing them within the child protection environment for Mothers in Mind, at least, and Katrina can speak to Caring Dads. We wanted to try this out as an accessibility part because we found referrals weren't getting women to the services. So if they weren't involved with a violence against women organization to begin with, they weren't getting access.
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well. Caring Dads as well is typically offered outside of a child protection context. The issue here is recognizing that child exposure to domestic violence is one of the main reasons that children are substantiated within child protection. Understanding that many of those mothers and fathers are not getting intervention through the programs that we already have set up. How do we do a better job in partnering, or can we do a better job in partnering and collaborating across the service and the child protection agency to look at providing service and seeing if we can get some positive outcomes there. So just echoing what Angelique is saying, that these programs were not designed originally for that kind of integrated child protection model, but it was this project that was testing it.
And I just also wanted to add that there's always, it was the community agencies were partnering. So those services were offered by the agencies, the violence against women agencies that were servicing those families already. They weren't just offered in child protection without that expertise at the table.
And a final question, and I'm going to ask both of you to respond to it, and I'll start with Katrina. If people want to run Caring Dads in their community, or they want to run Mothers in Mind, how do they get training and how do they make that happen?
Well, in fact, in part, as a result of this project and with the support of the Public Health Agency of Canada, one of the things is we've continued to update and make information available on our websites. So in Caring Dad's case, if you look at www.caringdads.org, there's information about training, there's resources, and there's information about, and then there's like a site where there's a community of practice for Caring Dad practitioners across Canada. You'll also be able to see where the program is offered in Canada.
And that's the exact same answer for Mothers in Mind. Go to mothersinmind.ca and you can find out everything you need to know about whether or not you can offer a Mothers in Mind in your community.
Angelique, Katrina, thank you so much. A very valuable research brief, and I'm sure there'll be lots of follow-up by people from across the country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.